everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic for you today. Let's do it. Night shifters. Have you ever had a paranormal experience? If so, what was it? Please remember to like, share, hype, listen and ask for shoutouts, and subscribe. Not during a night shift, but on a bleak, stormy day with just as much spooky potential as one. I was alone in the kitchen sandwich shop when I spotted a customer in the lobby. Never heard him come in. The door is pretty squeaky and closes hard, so it's difficult to miss someone walking in even without a bell like most businesses have. His back was to me, facing the opposite wall, standing in the middle of the room. I never saw his face, but he seemed to be an older man in his 70s. I greeted him with a hello, but he didn't reply. The stillness in the way he stood there, coupled with how he was facing away from me in dim lighting. It had been hot and humid out before the storm, so we had minimal lighting on to try and keep cool. Gave me kind of a Blair Witch vibe in retrospect, but at the time I waved it off as him looking out the window or something while he decided what he wanted. Plus, I'm used to rude customers, so I wasn't surprised by him ignoring me. I turned away to wash my hands so I'd be ready to throw together the sandwich once he was ready to order. I'd had my back turned for 20 seconds. Yes, this was during COVID, so I was counting. And when I turned back around, he was gone. Again, I never heard the heavy door open or close, and the only other door he could have left through was close enough to me that I would have absolutely noticed. He never came back, and I don't see why anyone would come into a sandwich shop for 30 seconds just to stare at the wall opposite the front counter and then leave without a word. Also, now that I think about it, he didn't even look wet, and it was pouring outside. So, I'm not really one to believe in ghosts, but a silent old man with Blair Witch vibes, plus a dark and stormy day, plus disappearing without a sound equals I definitely saw a ghost that day. I'm a dedicated night shift nurse. Several years ago, the unit that I worked on was kind of off on its own, the oldest part of a 100-plus-year-old hospital. During some basic repairs, they found some mold and, according to rumors, asbestos in the walls. So, my unit got shut down for a couple of months for repairs. They kept the nurses on whatever they could, with the result that we were occasionally really bored, thanks to acting as clerks or doing random odd jobs. A co-worker friend at the time was really into ghost hunting to the point of buying a decent quality ghost hunting kit. Thanks to not exactly being needed, we had ample time to wander the spookier corners of the hospital overnight. We didn't find a whole lot, just the occasional EMF spike or whatever they could be easily explained. After a couple of weeks, they took down the strict construction isolation stuff for our unit, and we decided to check out some of our supposedly haunted rooms. The place was eerie AF. They had all the utilities shut off. Remember, it was separate from the rest of the hospital, and it was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. We went into one of the rooms where a lot of deaths had occurred, thanks to being close to the nurses' station where we could put more critical patients. We set up a voice recorder, a thermometer, and an EMF detector. Then we started to ask any present spirits questions, standard stuff, like if they had died in the room, etc. Within a few minutes of us asking random questions, the temperature dropped a couple of degrees. Then, the EMF monitor started going off in short little bursts. Right as I asked this question, "Are you angry you died here?" the EMF squealed like a stuck pig, and we decided to get the hell out of there. The next morning, we went to my place to play the audio recording through my computer. Everything was on it. Our questions and the EMF noises. Right as I asked my last question of the night, there was this sound that coincided with the EMF burst we heard in the room. It was this low, drawn-out moaning sound that sounded like an enhanced version of a death moan or rattle. It made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, along with the worst case of goosebumps ever. I've seen a lot of weird shit in my time as a nurse. I'm also a film skeptic and love my peer-reviewed evidence. But I can't quite believe that recording noise temperature drop EMF readings was something normal that happened in an isolated unit of the hospital with all the utilities shut off. Edit. Like many other paranormal events, I can't provide proof. The recording was lost in 2014 when my laptop was stolen. I have 2 stories. My first overnight job was as a train dispatcher in Vermont. The center was in the train station that was about 100 years old. Now, maybe being on day 6 of an extra board made me quiet, but I saw a person standing in front of the restroom at like 4 a.m. White guy in his 40s, dressed semi-formal. Many coworkers would find items like that. The second instance was when I worked overnights at a mental health crisis house. It's a home-like setting that is a step below inpatient for mental health issues. It also provided a place for people at risk of relapsing to stay to have support. Anyway, there was one room in the place people would get weird vibes about. I would do a room check and get the feeling I was being watched each time. Other night staff reported hearing stomping upstairs, hearing voices and sudden temperature changes in the main room. The room also had the highest rates of self-harm and bump-ups, sending clients to inpatient or calling police if violent. I tried to sage and salt the room at one time and even did the banging on pots asking it to leave. It started to do more stomping when I was there. There were times there could be no clients in the house, so I could sleep on the couch in between calls. I started to have a lot more lucid dreams and sleep paralysis after trying to get rid of it. What I found interesting is how many different cultures would come in and out of the house, and if someone was spiritually connected, they would pick up on the vibe that something was up with the room. We had Kabbalah, Santeria, New Age, Catholic, you name it. They all picked up that something weird was going on about that place. I'm in law enforcement. My partner and I get sent to a call for an alarm activation. No big deal, but this is not one of our usual alarms. It's a new one we've never been to before. It takes us longer than normal to find the house because it's way back off the road and no lights are on. We finally find the place and it's super creepy. Spiders and webs everywhere. Nothing outside the house like a trash can or knickknacks. We split up per the usual to check the outside for open doors or windows. I go one way, he goes the other. The house is 2 stories. I get this sort of garage carport looking thing along with a locked shop of some sort on the first floor. Nothing weird or seen or heard. Partner is still making his way around to me from where we started. I find the stairs to the second floor and head up. I wind up on a giant covered porch attached to the house, and it's huge, literally the size of the carport below, with about 4 sets of wicker outdoor furniture. I'm looking around and don't see anything super weird. Partner finally gets to me upstairs and we talk about the weird layout for a minute. During this time I feel slightly unsettled, but I'm unsure why. I start looking a little closer through the sliding glass door at the front of the house. Partner tells me everything's locked up from his side, and there are even vines growing over some windows and doors. I start noticing little things in the living room. The carpet looks like it's from 1962. There's no TV. There are no electronics in general, and it has a very 60s layout. I thought all of that was weird, but I've seen weirder on this job. I then asked dispatch what the alarm activation was. I get told attic exit. Super weird and very specific, but okay. So we start looking around as best we can in the living room. No attic. Then it occurs to me, what if it's outside in this giant covered porch? I look up. Sure enough, directly above me is an attic. I can even see the alarm sensor boxes on it. I look at my partner and tell him I'm not going up. He suggests we rock, paper, scissors for it. I'm an idiot and agree. I lose. So I'm going up in the attic. At this point, we've made jokes about how weird all of this is. I'm slightly unsettled, but haven't said anything, and I'm literally never seen an attic outside that has alarms. Also, whose house looks like the 60s? I reluctantly pull my gun out and start climbing the ladder. I should mention I'm chubby. Attics and ladders aren't my friends. Stick my head up just far enough to see there are no people and not a lot of stuff up there, and it smells really weird. It smells like old people have been living up there for 20 years, likely dead old people. Not an actual dead body, thankfully, but like the smell of old people has died up there. I quickly come back down with nothing but the weird smell to report. I shrug it off as we go to leave. Partner pulls up next to me, jokingly saying we're looking at this all the wrong way. We weren't looking for someone getting into the attic. We should have been looking for something getting out. We both laugh it off as a weird call, weird drop, and jive off. As we drive back to our hiding spot a mile or so away, me in front of him in separate cars, I see what looks like a person standing in the roadway out of the corner of my eye. It looks like a black female wearing dark clothing, holding a light-colored bag, though I only saw the person for a split second. I'm not 100% sure of what I saw, so I wait and see if partner says anything about it. A few seconds after I pass whatever I saw, partner calls out over the radio that he and I are getting out with a person in the roadway at a given intersection. I turn around with him. This all happens within probably 20 seconds. We turn around and can't find the person. The person vanished completely. We described the person to each other and both definitely saw it and saw the same thing. No idea where the person or thing went. It was less than half a mile from the creepy house. So we're pretty sure that we're both haunted now thanks to work. We've had one more weird instance, unexplained thing at work. We attribute it to our ghost. So that's the story of how I became haunted and ran into a ghost that I accidentally released.
Alright guys, hello, how are you? Almost the new year, so just wanted to say I hope all of you are doing well. We had one question from Truth Be Told Reddit. I don't have that information, I'm sorry. But that I'm just like kind of the reader side of it all. But I hope you're doing well and good luck to everything. And we'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a great one.
So second-hand story, and just to be clear, I don't believe in paranormal activity as personally I've never witnessed anything I can't explain through other more likely events. In any case, in the house I grew up in, my sister always said there was a ghost, usually being described as an elderly old man in a flap cap who was never frightened or aggressive. He was apparently just a friendly old man. When we moved out, the person who we sold it to was a personal friend of my mother who planned to renovate the house to sell on. We found out that one of the younger apprentices who was working on the house a couple of times passed an elderly old man on the stairs, etc. One time he did this, then turned to ask who he was as he realized he'd never spoken to the fellow, assuming he was part of the team who was also working on the renovation. When he turned after passing him on the stairs one time, he just vanished. When he asked one of the senior workmen, he was told there's no one in the team with that description. The next time he saw him again, he did the same thing, passed him while walking through the house, and he'd turned to ask who he was. And he'd again just disappeared. The apprentice ran from the house and refused to enter it again. We found out when he gave a proper description of the man, he was exactly the same as my sister used to describe. Very strange indeed. And not something I can easily explain away, but then again, I never personally saw him or experienced it, so take it as you will. Oh yeah, I used to work in a grocery store from 2015 to 2017. I posted a while ago, but I'll post again. Well, not so much scary, but really unsettling, and this was at an old grocery store I used to work at. There would be several nights where I would see shadows or apparitions out of the corner of my eye, whether I was sweeping the aisle floors or cleaning the store's meat department. Would even see silhouettes of really strange shit in the meat department. Stuff would get knocked off of shelves, despite not being capable of it, like a box of rice that is pushed back when, even if it did fall over, it would still have plenty of shelf space to catch it. Constant feeling of being watched or hearing voices when there was no one there, especially if I worked a solo night and former coworkers who also worked alone heard the same thing. They would even swear they would hear us despite not being there. Footsteps were heard coming up the stairs, coming up to the new employee break room, even if all of us were there or if it was a solo night for any of us. Equipment would be moved or shifted around slightly. One witnessed a mop handle stand up on its own for 3 seconds and then readjust itself despite no real force capable of doing it. Would often see people inside windows looking at us, and there's no one out at that time of night. A guy I used to work with was asked me if I was playing a joke on him when I was cleaning off the bandsaw in the meat department. I told him no, I was cleaning the machine while I had the headphones in listening to BBC or NPR. And he told me he heard footprints walking behind him on the floor while he was mopping near the cash register, and he felt like someone was watching him. And the next night was rife with activity, and we even found a footprint that didn't match our shoes at all, and no evidence of someone else breaking in or being locked in with us. It was a part of where the mop water from the cleaning caked in spill because we were constantly being left without any cleaning. Creepy one here. When I was working a solo night and was cleaning the meat department during the middle of the cleaning while hosing off the meat cut prep table, I saw the plastic door entries all over move on their own. And if one of these is opened, the whole air of the room feels it. And all of these other plastic ones move on their own. I can especially use this to tell a coworker was about to sneak up on me and try to jump scare me. Especially if it was at night. We were all on edge afterwards. And there was no one there. I looked all around and it was pretty much empty anywhere. And I swear when I left briefly to gather my bearings, I saw someone out of the corner of my eye walking around in there, and later on, when finishing cleaning, turned off the lights, saw the deli slicer moving around on its own as if someone were trying to mess with it. Former night shift supervisor's experience. Well, here's a couple that I remember. Right before you guys came in one night, I remember I was making sure till amounts were correct and the turned in tills at the main safe, and as I did that, I heard footsteps behind me, and I looked around twice and saw no one there, and everyone had gone home. So I brushed it off, albeit a little freaked out, but I carried on trying to push it out of my mind, and not 2 minutes after that I heard a loud, menacing male voice shout, "You bitch," in my ear, and I quickly looked around and saw no one around. I just left it alone until you got there because I was too scared to continue. Another one I remember is Trip. Nope, that was just his nickname. Had already showed up and was upstairs talking to his girlfriend on the phone, and I was facing something. I can't remember what it was, but it was in the general cereal aisle. And as I was doing so, I remember clear as day I saw a box of Frosted Flakes that was in the way back just launch itself right off the shelf and hit the floor without bouncing or anything. It just hit the ground flat, which freaked me out. And then 20 minutes later, I saw Trip run into the meat room and yell at whoever was in there to get the f*** out of there. The store is closed, because he saw the plastic doors move on their own. And we both obviously know when someone goes in there, through those doors, it makes them all sway and weave. I asked Trip what that was afterwards, and he said he saw someone go in the meat room and thought it was a customer who was well known for being a jackass going in there to try to get a rack of rotisserie ribs or chicken, and there was nobody there. Many of more of my own experiences. When I and Trip worked together, we would often see shadow figures dart across the aisles in a split second, especially if we were looking directly down the aisle. And it wasn't just bad lighting. The lights had actually been changed out a week prior. A jug of Tide was knocked off a second shelf and it was tucked in the back, and both I and Trip stumbled upon it, and neither of us saw it or heard it fall. Nothing was broken either. Sometimes the music that was kept on all the time and playing through the intercom system would cut out briefly, as if someone was about to call or make an announcement, but all we would hear was the little ping it made, and only once did we hear something of what sounded like a woman make what sounded like a quick, and it quickly faded out. We rushed up to the front of the store and saw nothing. We looked all around and checked each phone, even the one by the offices and service center, and nothing was out of place. This one happened with anyone who was working in a meat room or outside the meat room. They would see shadow figures in it whether the lights were off or on, and would also see carts used for moving tubs that had slabs of meat to be prepared and packaged get moved from their original spot after we cleaned them and would hear equipment shuffling. We would also see faces looking at us out of the corner of our eyes through the windows. I think so. There might be a logical explanation for this, but I can't think of one. Also, it's weirdly mundane, so if this is my brush with supernatural forces, I don't really know how to feel about it. So I used to work at an old folks' home doing night shifts. One of the small miscellaneous jobs the night shift staff had to do was unload the dishwasher in the little kitchen area for the residents and make sure all the dishes were neatly put away in the correct cupboards. So, one night, I got to unloading the dishwasher and realized someone's put a bowl in there facing upward. I'm mildly annoyed at whoever did this, but get to packing the mugs into the cupboard above the dishwasher. As a short woman, I'm having to get on my tiptoes and stretch to put the last few mugs in the cupboard, but then one of the mugs falls. I'm focusing on making sure the other mugs in the cupboard are stable, so I don't see where the mug lands, but I hear smashing ceramic, so I know it's smashed. I secure the mug and go to access the damage. To my surprise, the smashing sound I heard wasn't the mug, it was the bowl. It split nearly into 3 pieces. I get to cleaning it up and realize there are no pieces on this mug anywhere. Apparently it's disappeared somehow. I look around for a bit, trying to work out where this mug landed, but I can't find it anywhere. I know that they're not mixed up with the pieces of the bowl, because the split in the bowl is so neat. I could piece it back together, and there are no pieces with a handle. I looked around for some time, and I couldn't find any pieces of that mug. Eventually, I just had to give up on it. I haven't worked there for a few years, but I've occasionally wondered if one of my old coworkers ever opened up that dishwasher and found a smashed mug at the bottom, like it traveled forward in time somehow. I don't know why I immediately jumped to the time-jumping mug, but I'm going with it. I used to be a manager at a local movie theater, and we had some spookery afoot. The theater was relatively new, as was the road it was on. The area was developed in the late 90s, but before the area was developed it had been farmland. The street that the theater, as well as a bunch of shopping centers and a Walmart were on, where an old farmhouse was, and sadly, very much like a horror movie, the farm had been home to a very brutal family murder. The father killed the whole family and then himself. So, I started working at the theater in 2007, and immediately new employees were told about the ghost. I've worked in a bunch of places, and most have some legend of a haunting, but every single employee affirmed that A. The theater was haunted, B. There were multiple ghosts, and C. They were so prevalent that you would get used to it very quickly. And they were not wrong. Theater 12 was the most haunted place in the theater. It was a benevolent haunting, it never seemed malicious, but it was certainly there. A girl died in there in the second year of the theater being open. She fell from the row of seats above the ramp way into the theater and landed on her head. She was playful, and once you accepted that there was a ghost, it didn't really bother you. She would knock armchairs down, ushers had to walk through, and put them all up, and open and close doors. The first time I really accepted she was there involved those damn armchairs. I had just gone and put them all up when one fell. I put it back up and the armchair next to it fell. And then the whole row fell. Scary, but once you figured it was a kid playing, it was somehow less scary. She'd also listen. If you told her you were scared, she would stop. The upstairs was haunted by a man. Nobody knew who that was, but everyone thought it was the dad that killed the family. All I know is the one was angry. The girl was playful, and you never felt scared when her things were happening. She wasn't stuck in Theater 12, but that was where she was most prevalent. The one upstairs slammed doors, held doors closed when you're trying to leave, and constantly turned lights on and off. The lights were the worst part. The upstairs booth was one long room with all of the projectors, and the lights were on each side of the room. So when they went out, you had a 30-ish second walk to turn them back on. You could just feel someone there with you. And it was the feeling of being in a room with someone that is very angry with you, but not saying anything. People said they saw things fly across the room or off decks, and I never saw that, but the lights and the doors were enough. Ooh, I got one. So my last job was a central supply tech at a tissue bank, meaning I would clean and sterilize the equipment used in the processing of human tendons, skin, muscle, and bone. I wasn't a third shifter, but I worked second shift 2 days out of the week. One day my job was to gather all the dirty equipment from the processing rooms and bring it down the hall to be decombed. For most of all the other jobs in central supply, you had partners. For this particular job, you didn't have a partner. So I was completely alone, taking equipment, some of which was coated in flesh and blood on carts, down to where we washed them off, which was creepy by itself. It was gross. It was also eerily quiet. You could hear the saws and drills in the processing room, but that's about it. Now, the processing rooms were set up to have like a little chamber so that the techs could toss their dirty equipment onto a cart and then I would come get it without coming all the way into the room, for sterility reasons. And the doors leading into the chamber were automated, but you had to wave your hand in front of a little sensor. That way you can't set them off by just simply walking past them. Now, I was taking some dirty equipment out of one room when I heard the sound of one of the doors down the hall open. I didn't think much of it. Sometimes the techs accidentally trigger the door to open when setting things on the cart. However, this happened like 3 or 4 times within the span of like 20 minutes. And at total random. It wasn't like something was stuck in the door and it was just trying to close. No. I'd hear it slide open. Then it would slide closed. And then it would be a couple minutes later that it would slide open again. So I went to check it out and ask if the techs needed something. As I was walking toward that direction, I even witnessed it open by myself. And when I got to that room, the room was empty. There wasn't a team doing any processing in that room. There was no reason for the door to open and close like that. And I think it did only one other time that night. I told the managers I was leaving that night. That way, if it was an issue with the sensor, someone could look at it. But no one else experienced anything like that from that specific room. I also never experienced it myself, but one of my friends was in the locker room getting changed out of scrubs when she heard the door open and heard footsteps. She didn't think much of it until she was leaving and saw absolutely nobody there. There are only 2 doors that go in and out of the woman's locker room, both of which are super loud and beep when you open them because you have to swipe your badge to get in. From what I was told, that happens quite a lot, but only in the girls' locker room.